Good night, good night. First, we test sound, as always. Waiting for it to show up on YouTube here. Good night, good night. Boom, we're good to go. Alrighty, guys. So we'll jump right into it, or we'll jump into it later. But first, a recap. We finished our small little project here. We finished our small little project here of the Node.js boilerplate code. So this script goes ahead and creates a whole bunch of Node.js apps for us, or the skeleton for a Node.js app. I put this together personally for myself so that I can actually just, create Node.js apps pretty quickly. I did all that mainly to get to this point. I want to start a new project, or continue actually a project that I've worked on in the past called FAT. And that is the Financial Asset Tracker. Yeah, you like that? Yeah, FAT. There we go. So, I also wanted to do this comic book. I had this comic book a while ago called Fatso. It was pretty cool. It was like spelled like, how's it spelled? Like, T, yeah, so it's spelled like this here, right? Spelled like Fatso. And then it was called Fully Autonomous Tank Suit Zero. So that was pretty cool idea I had came up with. I thought it was pretty good, but I never really did anything with it. It's one of those things where you think about something and you're like, oh, well, when I have time to do it, I really just didn't put anything into it. I don't really want to do it, really. But always a thought that I've had. Jermaine, appreciate you showing up, brother. Really do appreciate that, man. So yeah, we're working on our API project here. We'll be working on consuming the Coinbase API, but before we get to that, so the Node.js boilerplate, we got all that done. For the most part, we got all this stuff done to where it creates a Node.js app. We'll actually be using it in the next stream. In this stream, we're just going to be exploring API, reading documentation, getting familiar with it, and using tools such as Postman, or as I like to call it, Rocket Man, after the song. But first, we start off with a little bit of artwork. This is a really nice picture. I like this. CDBD. I like the artwork on this. Very beautiful. It's like, city at dusk or something like that. Maybe even dawn. Not sure. But really nice, like brown, soft colors. Also looks kind of like dirty, if you will. Just because it's just using so many browns. And, like lighting can have that effect on certain things where it'll actually illuminate it a little bit more, make it look quote unquote better, and sometimes actually make it look worse. So, yeah. But yeah, so let's go ahead and download that piece of art there. I like this one. Let's see what else they got too. As I always say, take time, look at art. There's pretty things out there. This is really nice here. Whoa, I like that. I wish it was a little bit bigger in terms of just the resolution, but yeah, it's really nice. But yeah, take time. Take mental breaks, and allow your mind to have a break. Put your head down for a second, or just look at something. You can't veg out too long, of course, but take time to realize the beauty of things around you. It's very important, especially when you're doing this type of stuff, because what we do in terms of being a coder, IT support, and things like that is it's mentally taxing. So it's a lot of work, and sometimes we can overwork ourselves and even burn ourselves out, which I have. Took me a while to admit, but yeah. But anyways, so financial asset tracker. Um, with this, essentially, examples, system bars. Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff in here. Um, this I'll probably remake this or something like that. I don't think there's much in here. But with the financial asset tracker, it's mainly to replace my spreadsheet. So I have a spreadsheet that I show in the MGTOW retirement videos. And in that spreadsheet, I have like whole bunch of different calculations and graphs and all types of stuff. And I have to go in here, update all this stuff in this. I have some small calculations such as like the YOLO move. I'll have that, and then I'll have like some larger, some bigger stuff going on, such as like loan amortization. Um, Even like calculators, like looking at land and all types of stuff. So basically building out the pieces of this, where we're going to start, what's the entry level or the entry point to all this data, and then where we can go from there. And then I can also take that data, manipulate it, do all types of different calculations and projections, maybe even run calculations where I project things a year to 2 years out, depending on how things change, and also make better graphs um, that are labeled better, because this is just labeled like this because of the dates that or just because like I wish I had the date column underneath it, but for me to do that, I have to do all types of other stuff. It's to the point where it's time to have this generated via a program. So I always show this stuff to people and like just put this out there because I believe sharing the information is more important than keeping the information to yourself. So let's go through this. I'll put this tab back where I found it. And one of the first things we're going to do is go through the Coinbase API. So I took a couple screenshots, blurred out some stuff that I just don't want to share. But these aren't really anything that's like crazy. There's not much information here, I think. Watch all my stuff get hacked. Um, so in this case, I generated, if you go to settings under Coinbase, um, if you want access to their API, I believe most of these financial services should always have at least at minimum, a read-only API. At minimum, I don't need something that, for me personally, I don't need something that's actually going to make buys and sells and stuff like that. I eventually probably want to get to that, but for me and for what I need to do now, I just need a read-only API, aka an API that only allows me to read data. It doesn't allow me to write, or make any changes of any sort. Um, Coinbase is really nice because it allows you to actually um, add different things that you can actually do with this API. As you can see right now, I generated an API key. So this is under settings and then API. And then you can do new API key. So if you have multiple applications, maybe you have a super secret application that actually allows for writing or something like that, you can do that. What I did enable is I enabled this whole API. I enabled it so I can look at my wallet and check all my different accounts and read the values in them. I can read the buys, I can read the deposits, and I can read the sells in the API via the API or in the wallet. I do have to go through this a little bit more, but we'll talk about that later. And then what I also did is add an IP restriction. So I can only access this API, or should be only able to access this API from my local IP here. It doesn't show the IP address. And once you generate the key, you have to save it somewhere and you can't get it back later. So you can't just go back and look at the key again. Most systems are like that. I want to say this one is like that as well, but you should be able to generate that key once and you'll never see it again, because it's really nothing to generate a whole new key. But if you have a whole bunch of different apps that are using it, you're going to have to change that key in those different apps. All right, so here, one thing I noticed is this API version and notifications. Um, this has an old API version. They do have a new one, which is noted in the documentation, which we'll go to in a moment. But I'll be upgrading this one here. I just don't know what it does, but I did want to show this, that, hey, you have an upgrade button here, and you might want to go ahead and press that depending on, some of the upgrades that they actually have. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, upgrades that they have. If you're using something like OAuth 2 applications, it says build applications for others using the Coinbase API. So you can use something like OAuth to allow single sign-on, if you will, with different people using your app. So for instance, maybe I take this authentication or this financial tracking application or website, and I open it up for general use for other people. I can use they can use OAuth to access their account and give access to my application and the code so that I can access all their information. And that way they can control authentication and then they can control access to what that app can do and things like that. Essentially, you'll request access and then you can go from there. But yeah, so that's pretty much it when it comes to the what's it called, the Coinbase API, or that's pretty much it. What I've done so far as the API key for the Coinbase API. All right, and the next picture I have is this is what I get. This is what I get in my email because I put on notifications to make sure that I get notified of anything happening in my Coinbase account. For me to actually get the API key, I actually have to use my two-factor authentication, which I set up before. Essentially, you should set up two-factor authentication for everything. I use an app called Authy, and Authy is nice because I can use it on multiple devices, unlike your Google Authenticator, which only works on one device. And that was the last time I used it was probably like a year or more ago. So if they've changed that, great. But it sucks if you can't, get your MFA keys off your device for any reason. So that really blows. But I like Authy because it allows me to put it on multiple different applications. I don't know if there's a security issue with that. It does allow you to back up if you need to back up your key stores. But I don't know if there's a security issue where maybe since it's like stored maybe on a central server somewhere that that can be a bit of a honeypot for people. But I use Authy and I like it as a MFA tool. Um, but this one, or what Coinbase does, it'll send you an email saying, "Hey, someone's generated an API key that has these following permissions." So that's a really good thing to have, and make sure you do things like that. Securing your data is very important. All right, so let's get into the API. One thing that's pretty cool is, as I said, they have different versions of the API. Sometimes that can be confusing, but I do think it is nice. This is something I saw I see with the Azure Blob Storage. The only problem is if they don't keep track of their documentation or keep their documentation up to date, then you'll have issues when you're trying to write code for it because you'll have old examples or you'll have new problem or no, you'll have the same problem, but you're using old examples to solve them, and that's a problem because the code is totally off, right? Or the not the code, but the method in which you do these things are totally off. So when you're going through API and going through the documentation, one of the things you want to do is like start from the top. One of the nice things I also like to do is like once I figure out the authentication portion of it and get through that, it's like okay, cool. Now I can start consuming the API and go from there. So you see how you have wallet endpoints and things like that, and that's where we're going to be through next. This looks like it's a pretty short section, but let's go through that. Um, let's actually break down the sections of this page here. Left-hand side, we have the index. In the middle, we have the meat. So it tells us, what we're looking for and how to do certain things. On the right-hand side, we have the different ways of consuming the API. It gives you different code examples and also gives you examples based off of whatever your environment is and the way you choose to interact with it. If you use curl, that's pretty much like using a web browser somewhat to get this data. If you use, for instance, Ruby on Rails or the Ruby programming language, you can, look at code and how to do that. Python, same thing. Node.js, which is what we're going to be using, you have the same thing. So, for instance, if we do go down to users, it shows you how to actually consume that possibly. Yeah, it gives you some code snippets. Where is it? Okay, we got no. User resource, show a user. Okay, here we go. So for instance, example or request require Coinbase. Okay, so this is cool. When you're going through this, you can see that it looks like Coinbase actually has a an actual client or client library. So let's go ahead and look that up. npm.js. Ooh, this is a cool picture too. Oof, arrival. Colonizers. Download that one. Well, yeah. Very ominous there. That's pretty cool. I like that. It's using like real pit photos to make this happen. Anyways, back to it. npmjs.com, and we're gonna put in Coinbase, Coinbase Pro Node, Coinbase API fork, Coinbase API for Node.js. So Coinbase API written in TypeScript and covered by tests. That's pretty cool. I don't know if I'll be using that because I don't use TypeScript. It's probably something I'm gonna get into sooner or later. But API fork, the Coinbase API fork for Node.js. So it looks like they forked it. Node Pro Tools. All right, let's go with this one here. One thing to do when you're like when you're traversing npm.js is look at things like published. So I can see that this was published 3 years ago. We're not using it. You download something like this and you start using it. This is exactly what I was talking about in terms of old code, old problems, and then trying to deal with that with new code. If we go back to our API, go to versioning, we can see that a lot has changed, and the version of the API, the latest version of the API is from November 15th, 2019. So remove deprecated instant exchange feature. So now I can see like all the different options that I have in this version of the API. And one thing, let's go back to our photo here. Currently, my API version is 2016. So if I look at 2016, so you have all this information here in terms of what they've changed. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different versions since that version 2016. So it looks like this 2019 is fairly stable. They're making probably changes to it and things like that. But now I can see that, hey, I'm not going to be working with this 2016. We'll work with it for now. Hopefully we can get to actually consuming the API, and that'll be me hitting my head against a couple walls there. So hopefully that'll be entertaining to you guys. But this is why it's important to know about things like this. You can actually pass a certain version or use a certain version of the API, and then of course you're going to have to program for it as well. One thing they say here, API client libraries, Node.js. Oh, okay. So they have Coinbase Node. It is now read only. Okay, so they have an old version bump, 2018. So this is 3 years ago, 6 years ago. All right, so let's look at, let's go back in npm.js here and look for the right version. And we can do some of these things without using the client libraries, but it's nicer to use the client libraries because they have functions that should just work, and it adds a bit of an abstraction layer to working with their code. But it also adds constraints, meaning that, if they don't have something in their client library, guess what? You're going to have to make it, sucker. But it is what it is on that. So let's go ahead and do a search here. We can see here optimal maintenance. See what maintenance looks like. Sort packages. So I wanna see auto. Yeah, but we got like 3 years ago. All right, and then you also have to be careful with the package that you choose, because if it's not done by the actual service provider, then you might be having issues where you might have a data leak of some sort, or a potential vulnerability in that code because you're using a library to create files, and within that library, it's actually sending information off to a third party. So that's something that you do have to worry about. Okay. So this Coinbase API fork, which I don't think we're going to use, we're probably going to use Coinbase Pro Node. Let's see here. Coinbase Pro API for Node.js written in TypeScript and covered by tests. With this one, this is the most recent, 7 days ago. Just because it's written in TypeScript doesn't mean that you have to write your code in TypeScript per se. Really just means that the underlying code is written in TypeScript, and TypeScript is a form of JavaScript as I know it. Again, actually, you know what? let's not fumble around with that one. Let's go and look what TypeScript is. TypeScript is a programming language developed and maintained by Microsoft. See, look at that. I was right from like the first sentence. It is a strict syntactical superset of JavaScript and adds optional static typing to the language. TypeScript is designed for the development of large applications and transcompiles to JavaScript. So, as I know of TypeScript, like a string is a string is a string. Like you can't mess up and put a number in the place of a string. It will throw an error. It will have an issue with that. Um, like maybe we can go a little bit deeper here. Wikipedia, the number one source for information on the internet. Wikipedia is always right, guys. Just letting you know that. Okay, it's not. All right. TypeScript may be used to develop JavaScript applications for both client-side and server-side execution, as in with Node and Deno. Also notice that Deno is just a what's it called? A reorganization of the DE before the NO. It's made by the same person, or was actually started by the same person, same that made Node.js. There are multiple options available for transcompilation. Either the default TypeScript checker can be used, or Babel compiler can be invoked to convert TypeScript to JavaScript. TypeScript, let's skip that history. TypeScript was first made public in October 2012 after 2 years of internal development at Microsoft. Soon after the announcement, Miguel de Icaza praised the language itself, but criticized the lack of mature IDE support apart from Microsoft Visual Studio Code, which was not available on Linux or in OS X at the time. As of April 2021, there's support on other IDEs and text editors. All right. All right. So, you guys can read all that. Just one thing left, right, number. All right. TypeScript provides static typing. All right. So let's look at static typing. In programming languages, a type system is a logical system comprising a set of rules that assigns a property called a type to various constructs of a computer program, such as variables, expressions, functions, or modules. These types formalize and enforce the otherwise implicit categories the program. Guaranteed. It's considered. All right, so it doesn't give me where I started off or I left off. All right, so if a program passes a static type checker, then the program is guaranteed to satisfy some set of type safety properties for all possible inputs. So what that tells me, it's like just validation already written. So when you write something out in TypeScript, it already validates it validates that code per se. So if I write something, it's a number, and then it has to be a number. So anything I write in there, it will throw an error if it is not considered a number. Now, if we see the number 6 encapsulated in quotes or double quotes or single quotes, that is not actually a number. That is a string, right? So if I put in 6 or quoted 6, then that means that is not a number. It will not be massaged to be a number. It has to be a number, aka I have to put in the number 6 with no quotes. Richard Dixon, thanks for showing up, brother, as always, man. That explains why I like C# better than JS then. Okay, yeah. And that, I guess that would make sense because better than JS. Actually, sorry, why does that make sense? I have an idea why that makes sense, but I don't know C# well enough. I'm assuming that C# has some type of TypeScript, what's it called? TypeScript properties to it. So let me know in the chat there. But I'm making an assumption there. So last thing I wanted to read. Static type checking can be considered a limited form of program verification. See type safety. And type-safe language can be considered also an optimization. If a compiler can provide that a program is well typed, then it does not need to admit dynamic safety checks, allowing the resulting compiled binary to run faster and to be smaller. Yeah, that makes sense. So you don't have to write in all types of different validations and stuff like that for your inputs and outputs. Ah, okay. So yeah. All right. So it wasn't too much of an assumption. I was kind of on the right path there. C sharp has the type checking, which is what Richard Dixon said here. Yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. So you might like TypeScript then, instead of just regular JavaScript. Yeah, because when you're like working with JavaScript, that is one thing I have to deal with. There's the Joy library, and that Joy library allows for validation for all your inputs. But if you already have something like typescripting, then it will automatically say, hey, listen, that's not a number. You put in a string. With Node.js or with JavaScript, what it'll actually do is it'll actually run a couple different conversions on it, and it'll actually convert a string to a number if it senses that that string is actually a number. So even if it's like 6.0, it can convert that to 6, and then go from there and actually convert that to a number that actually has a decimal place to it. I don't know the underworkings of that, but in terms of like reading, it'll do things like that underneath the hood there for you. And that could cause things like misuse of, not even misuse, but um, efficiency issues with your code. All right. So yeah, TypeScript. This was 6 months ago. Coinbase API what's it called? API fork. Let's see what this one says. All right, cool. So that just takes us to the documentation. We'll probably be using this. But the thing is, it says Coinbase Pro, and I don't use Coinbase Pro, so I'm not sure which one I'm going to be using here. But this is something that will happen later on, as we discover, which API is going to work and which one is not. Alright. But what's nice is you'll have these different demo sections. So you have your API key, your API secret, which is what you get, and then your passphrase. Oh, okay, so let me actually look at what I got here. Yeah, I don't have a passphrase. Oh, okay, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, this is kind of the confusing part. It's like, okay, well, I don't have, maybe I'll be using this one, and I don't know what version it'll use. Again, during this time, this is what you're doing. Um, you're going through things like this, and you're trying to find out, okay, the best way to use it with the information that's supplied. I was supplied three things. Actually, one of them I provided and just gave it back to me. So I'm looking at another screen on this one. So I was given the API key and then the API secret and then the IP restriction. So this told me the IP address that I put in. So this one jives more with what I actually have. So this one makes sense because I only have the API key and the API secret. Richard, what you got for me? So you can use JS and TypeScript with the Pro. All right. So what it's showing, TypeScript is the underlying code. I can use regular JavaScript. It's just the actual node library or the node module is written in TypeScript. So if I put in a number and or if I put in a string that's supposed to represent a number, it should actually produce some sort of an error that says, hey, this is not a number and we're not going to massage or trying to make this better for you. Um, Now you can use regular Node.js, or sorry, you can use regular JavaScript with the TypeScript module if you wanted. But so let's put your question on the screen there. You can use the regular JavaScript. What's it called? You can use regular JavaScript with a TypeScript module, if you will, but it'll give you an error if it isn't the right type for, say, for instance, a function parameter or something like that. One way to look at that, and let's go to the GitHub. All right, and let's look at source. Let's look at order, index.ts, order API, and we did this in one of the early previous streams where we looked at an API. We looked at, I think we was looking at Azure, the Azure Blob Storage API a little bit and going through it. So in this case, type order market. All right, here we go. So we have our type, right? And then order type dot market. So I guess we have our order type and then the market, and that's something that's defined somewhere else. All right. And then we have our size, which should be a string. So it knows, since it's written in TypeScript, we're already supplying the actual typing in terms of like what size should be. Size should be a string. Funds should be a string. Type should be order type dot market. Now I don't know. I don't know what order type is, and it looks like I don't have much highlighting here or anything like that. It's most likely the way they wrote it. What's it called? GitHub usually actually highlights certain things like that. If you write it properly and put proper parameters and things like that, it's kind of like a living documentation, and it'll connect certain things depending on the IDE that you're actually using. It's something I do want to get better at myself. But let's see here. Order type and then market is market. So yeah, order type market, and then so export enum. I don't know what the enum means. I think it just means number. Enum enumeration. And enum is a user-defined type consisting of a set of name constraint or constants called enumerators. All right, cool. So enum means enumerator. All right. So it looks like it exports a whole bunch of different functions here, or variables. Actually, not even variables, but JSON objects actually. So we have a JSON called order type. Interface pending extends. Okay, so when it extends something, usually it means it inherits the pieces of the thing that it extends. So in this case, pending order. This is the definition. So it'll extend this, meaning it'll add these options to it when you're calling base place order. C# has enums as well. I believe quite a few. I want to say like I've seen enums in other languages as well, or enumerators in other languages as well. So I want to say that most languages have some type of enumerator. Um, could be wrong, but I think even like PHP. I haven't worked outside of Node.js, and I haven't really gotten deep into Node.js as well, doing things like classes and even extending certain things. I know what they do for the most part, but I just don't use them. I don't use them a lot at all. So this is kind of like a part of me learning, and that's one good thing about going into code and diving into different APIs or even GitHubs and looking how quote unquote, you know, real programmers do it. All right, so you have the param here, which is nice. And then it says product ID, representation for base and counter. These things are nice because when you're actually coding something, to have those parameters and know what you can actually put there, it gets highlighted or pulled into an IDE or read by an IDE. So that's really nice to have. One thing that's nice about IDEs, it does a lot of work for you. So all the stuff that I'm doing here, I could just start typing code and just really know, what are the functions that are exposed or given to me. But in terms of what we were doing in the first place, which was just looking at types, that's kind of how type scripting is. All it does, it just defines, hey, it's a inline validation, if you will, is like how I'd like to say it. It's like, okay, well, it can validate this and then go from there. Or sorry, validate this and then I can go from there and it'll give me an error if I don't do it properly. what's also nice is that what we're looking at is like base order, and it's just like, okay, so you're telling me that I can do base order and then couple that together? That's kind of cool. And then you also have a pipe operator, funds string. Okay. Wow. So you're like chaining these things together. I didn't know you can do something like that. Um, One thing that I've learned, especially with coding, is reading through this. Oh shoot, let me get rid of that. Uh, okay, I only messed around with C and trying to get a handle on JS now. Yeah, I think you're talking about the comment with the enumerators. I want to say enumerator is something that's just well known, almost like abstraction layers. You have all these different models. If I didn't have this not models but modules, if I didn't have this module, I'd have to write all this stuff myself, which is nice to actually have a module that already does all of that for you. Oh, okay. I need to close that. I don't need that. All right, and then Postman. All right, so one thing that's nice is I learned something called blocking. So you can do if statement and then return X, right? And then that'll be it. So instead of writing an if statement with multiple lines, and I think I've done this before, if statement, and you can have your condition, right? Condition. I don't need to write all. I don't need to write all of that to return X. Like I can take that same 3 lines and condense it into one or consolidate it into one, which is really nice, especially if you only have one output for that. So doing things like blocking, this is great for if conditions. If you want to have like an object pre-processor or post-processor, for instance, if I have an object that I want to process information before it actually gets to maybe another function or something like that. I'll have an object preprocessor that will go through that object and have it go through a series of checks before I actually feed it to a function, just to make sure that I don't have any errors or anything like that going into that function. All right, so in this case, I won't be using Coinbase Pro because one, I don't use Coinbase Pro, and two, with Coinbase Pro, it's asking for a couple more things such as your passphrase, and I don't really need that. Um, use Sandbox, true, and Coinbase Pro I think is nicer because you're having the option of using a sandbox. So if you do something, you can see how that code works and without probably playing with real money, if you will, but without actually committing something and committing an actual trade or something like that. All right, so back to what we were doing in the first place. Oof. It looks like we're going to be using this module, Coinbase API fork. Looks like it was updated 6 months ago, so we're gonna have to deal with that if there are any problems. It shows us actually how to make actual make actual calls to the API. So that's really cool. And I'll probably get an actual Node.js application for this fired up in the next stream. I started this stream a little bit late because I wanted to do a couple of things before I started it, and also get all the stuff I needed together and not have to do that on stream with you guys because it'll be a lot of off-screen stuff. So. But selling Bitcoin, sending Bitcoin. And what's nice is you can read through this documentation here and you can see how to at least get started. And most of the stuff that you're going to see here is what you're going to need. The other stuff, though, you're going to have to just dive into the repository and go from there. And again, we're in the wrong repository anyway. We need to be in the GitHub repository for this. And that is not, doesn't look like it's written in TypeScript, but we'll see. So lib. And it's good to actually read more about these things because then we can see like if maybe some reviews or something like that, or maybe even go to, it doesn't look like it has issues. Let's look at this. No, it doesn't look like it has issues. There's nothing security, no security advisories. All right. There aren't any pull requests. So we just look at the code itself. All right. We can go into lib and then base.js. All right, cool. Let's do client.js. And with client.js, we can see that, let's see here, dot model. Okay, so we see that at the beginning, it calls a couple things, calls a couple files. And it looks like schema files or models that we need to use here, or that it needs. And we can look at those here. So account.js, and we could see how some of these things are put together in terms of like our accounts and what it expects as well. And these are models that are predefined. And in some cases, you can have validation and checking on those models as well, especially if you're using something like the Joy library. And that Joy library is JOI. And then you have the validation portion of that Joy library. All right, so prototype, create address, get address. Okay, you could transfer money even. So now I'm just going through this and I'm looking at all the things that I can actually do. In an IDE, if you're using like the client library or anything like that and you're calling it, again, it'll give you a lot of that information as you're typing and show you like kind of a predictive, or it predicts what you're probably going to want to do and gives you all those things so that you can actually look at them and even read a little bit about them before you actually put them through. So I'll probably be doing things like account base. And I'll probably be doing things like get all. So probably doing something where I get all the information out of my wallet. Internal API. Okay. Well, we know where to start. I've gotten too far into this. Sorry. Sometimes you get into something and you're just like focusing in on the code and it's like, oh, wow. All right, I could do this. I can do that. So on and so forth. And I do want to go over Postman and using it as well. Uh, Coinbase API. All right, cool. So, all right. API key is recommended if you only need to access your own account. All API key requests must be signed and contain the following headers. The CB access key, CB access sign, the user generated message signature, see below, and CB access timestamp, a timestamp for your request. All request bodies should have the content application JSON, so it's a JSON object, and be valid JSON, meaning that, no extra commas in some cases, depending on what they use to check stuff. CB access sign header is generated by creating a SHA-256 HMAC. Damn it. Yeah, so we got to program something for this and use the actual library. Fudge. All right. Not a big deal or anything here. Let's go ahead and open up something here. So we can't use Postman, but let's do this here. I do want to use Postman and kind of focus on that for you guys. Coinbase public API. So Coinbase, I believe, has a public API. At one point, they did. In fact, I saw it mentioned here. Public sandbox. Oof. Maybe they don't have it anymore. Exchange API. Get current time. Curl. Wow, okay. It looks like you have to have a token, a bearer token for that. So I'm looking at the curl. Essentially, you can use something like curl, which is something in Linux, and you can use that to interface with APIs. I think curl's in Windows too, but maybe through PowerShell or something like that. But you can use curl, probably even use wget. But with curl, you can actually send different headers, like using the -h. Send an authorization header with a bearer token. In this case, this is there's different ways of authorizing yourself. Let's actually go through. It's like just do a GET request. So you have different parameters that you can put in terms of query parameters for a GET request. You can also do a POST request. POST request is where you send data. A GET request, uh, you send data in the actual URL itself. So it'll be like url.com/question mark what's it called? Variable one equals equals one, and then you could do like and or ampersand, and do variable two. So you can't have spaces in a URL. If you do have spaces, it would be like a %20, I believe. 20 is this an actual HTML space? Okay, I probably just can't have spaces. Period. Probably have something like that, an underscore, right? But when you're doing your variables, and then you can have that equal 200, right? But as you can see, these are the query parameters that I'm using for my GET request. The nice thing about GET request versus a POST request is a POST request, I would have to actually give you the body every single time. So if I do a POST request, that same request, let's just do raw, and that same request, I would have to write it out as variable one, and then whatever your value is for that, and then proper JSON, put a little what's it called at the end, a little comma, and then variable to value to, right? And I would have to send you that body every single time. What's nice about a GET request, it's somewhat reusable. So if I do a GET request, I can always use this URL and copy and paste it and get the same information, or get the same type of information, or reach the same endpoint, or give the same endpoint the same information. Now I cannot use a GET request on a POST endpoint, and the same thing vice versa. It'll usually come back with an error of some sort because you're using the wrong HTTP method. These are HTTP methods. You have quite a few of them. So the main ones, though, are get, post, and I want to say get, post, and there is put, and then there's like delete and patch. But all these others, you don't really see them much at all. They're there, and in some cases, I've heard some of these things are deprecated. I'm not sure if some of these are, but really, these top ones are the main ones. And even with like a post can do pretty much all of this, because you can write your post method to accept information, and then the backend logic will handle it from there. So really, the only two ones that you use for the most part on simple, less sophisticated APIs is your get and your post. You can do a put, patch, and delete. So actually, let's go ahead and look up, uh, and we'll get back to the public API. Hopefully we can find one for Coinbase, and I don't have to program something here. That'll take a little while to set up if I do, though. But HTTP methods. Oop. All right, cool. So the Mozilla Documentation Network, or Mozilla Documentation, is freaking excellent, and pretty much, of course, they're the ones that made JavaScript. So they're the place you want to go to for any updates, for the most part, in terms of the JavaScript standard, or the various different versions and standards throughout the lifestyle, or um, yeah, if there's any updates or anything else like that, you'll find them there. Um, HTTP request for methods. HTTP defines a set of request methods to indicate the desired action to be performed for given resource. All right. Although they can also be nouns, these request methods are sometimes referred to as HTTP verbs. Okay, meaning they take action. Each of them implements a different semantic, but some common features are shared by a group of them. Ergo, request method can be safe in oh man, item potent. I know this word. I don't remember what it means, but I think it's item potent. We'll look at that word because we need to like learn new words. Or cacheable. Cacheable is mostly like get requests. So item potent. An HTTP method is item potent if an identical request can be made once or several times in a row with the same effect while leaving the server in the same state. All right. Richard Dixon says, someone told me get, post, put, delete is basically CRUD. Yeah, CRUD is darn it, it's create, read, update, delete. Yes. It is easier for me to remember it like that. And you're correct. Um, but CRUD mainly has to deal with, as I know it, with databases. So when you're talking about CRUD, you're really talking about databases. And yes, you can make that correlation. And that's actually a good that's a good way to actually remember the two different things. So for instance, if you're doing a create, that's most likely a post. If you're doing a read, that's most likely a get. If you're doing an update, that's most likely a put. If you're doing a delete, that's most likely a delete. And that's how it correlates with the different HTTP methods. But that's a really good way of actually thinking about it. And that's definitely important if you're a full stack developer, knowing those different methods and what that actually means in terms of even database calls. Because when you're writing actual logic for the back end, so for instance, I use Express.js, and with Express.js, I can do like app.get for get request, and and it'll look like something like this. And then I can do a DB call, and then, or sorry, let result equal, let's make this valid, DB call. Oh, let's make it truly valid. And then I can take that result dot um, key one, and then I can do, usually if I'm doing express, I have like about two variables. I have request, and I also have response. So then I have my request, and that request could be like, I could do let body. Let's take this off the screen here. But that was a good one, Richard. I could do like body equals request dot body, right? And that'll give me access to the request body. For instance, if I made a post or a get, and that could be like a JSON object. In this case, I'm doing, I'm doing a get, and that get should give me maybe some information in the body, maybe, Actually, let's do a post because then this I know for sure. So I can do a post, and then, I can do, this will be the endpoint. And you'll see this when I actually start going a little bit deeper into this, but I can do a post for the / endpoint. In this case, that'll be the, after the .com, you have that /, and this is the endpoint that we're reaching. If you're doing a GET request, if you're going to Amazon.com, essentially your request kind of looks like this, right, to Amazon, depending on what they use for their web server or the thing that's doing all their business logic. I want to say, like, last time I heard, like, their binary is like a gig of code of like just text, like a whole gig or something like that. I remember listening to that in an article, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. That's a crap ton of code. Most of the code that like I'll write is probably a couple kilobytes. And that's like just straight text, not even like images or anything like that. So their code alone is like takes up a gig in just about in terms of memory. probably even bigger than that. All right, so yeah, so I get the body. It's a post request, and that body is a JSON object. I can take that JSON object, and then I can do like result of DB call, and I put the body in there, something like that, and that gives me a result. I go for key one in that result, and then I can do res dot send, and then I can send some JSON back. And then I can send a status as well. So an actual status code of 200, meaning it's A-OK. You do have to go ahead and learn HTTP methods or HTTP responses, such as OK, what's 400, 100, 200. So the main ones are 200, 400, like 404 not found. 200 is okay. Okay, no errors. You even have 201, which is like created. So returning the right status code is very important as well, depending on what you're actually trying to push out there. So if you're building even a simple API, adhere to the status codes so that the person consuming the API on the other side, whether they know it or not, they're going to get the proper status code and they know what to deal with, even if they get a 201, which is good, but a 201 means, I believe, created. So I can do res send, and then I can do status, and then success, and then payload, and then that could be result dot actually. Right, and that could be my payload. And then on the front end, the way that actually looks is just like this. So that's what we'll get in, Rocket Man and whatever this is. So status.key one, that could be like $1,000 or something like that, right? Like that could be the value of key one. In this case, let's say key one is wallet balance, right? And then that's how it's going to look. Well, that's how it's going to come out to be. All right. And then if it's like Coinbase, it'll say like 1,000. And then maybe it actually has, actually maybe that, again, we're just gameplay. We're just thinking about a scenario here. Oh, forgot the comma. That would have been error. Maybe that payload is actually a JSON object, right? And that JSON object contains balance, 1,000. And we might have currency or denomination. I think I spelled that right. And then the denomination might be USD. And we could probably even have conversions into other things, but it gives us a number, not a string, as you can see here. And then we can convert that number to a string, or even convert that from USD to something else if we wanted to, or we can tell it, hey, I want it in euros or something like that. Whatever the 3-digit code is for that currency. So these are the things that you'll see in terms of when you're doing all these different methods and requests. Let's read through it. Yeah, so idempotent or idempotent. If identical in other word, or let's read that again. An HTTP method is idempotent if an identical request can be made once or several times in a row with the same effect while leaving the server in the same state. In other words, an idempotent method should not have any side effects except for keeping statistics. Implemented correctly, the get, head, put, and delete methods are idempotent, but not the post method. All safe methods are idempotent. All right, so that means that I can do a get to read something. Head, I don't know what that means. Put, I know with put, you can put information in, and then delete. Wait, that's just kind of weird, especially with what I know about delete. Like, how is that idempotent? Because it says, in other words, an idempotent method should not have any side effects except for keeping statistics. What the fuck? How is it delete idempotent? Like, that should change something on the server, I would assume. Well, if the documentation says it, I guess it's right. And maybe I'm just thinking of it wrong. But let's go back. So these are our HTTP request methods. I'll go ahead and put this in the chat. Definitely go look this up and read a little bit more about it. You know how I usually do it. I jump around a little bit, but we have to learn just about a little bit of everything while we're doing all of this. So actually, let's look at head. The head method asks for a response identical to that of a GET request, but without the response body. Okay. Post. I don't think I'd ever really use that unless I needed something only in the response and not the body itself. Huh. Okay. The put method replaces all current representations of the target resources with the request payload. So let's think about what it said in terms of idempotent. It makes no changes. Let's keep this open. All right. It says implemented correctly, but not post. Okay. An idempotent method should not have any side effects except for keeping statistics. All right. So why is put idempotent? The put method replaces all current representations of the target resource with the request payload. Okay, so it updates everything. So there shouldn't be any change. Head seems equivalent to header. Okay, so the head method asks for the response identical to that of a GET request, but without the response body. Right, so if it's getting just the header, meaning that it doesn't get anything in the body. So for instance, if I'm expecting something in that payload section, in the little example that I wrote here, it should get everything except for this. Okay. I mean, and that would make sense maybe if I have I don't get that request body. Maybe I use that for something like maybe if I just want the status code. If I wanted the HTTP status code and I don't want anything else, I get a head request and then it just gives me that back. But I would have to make a route for that, and I probably would never use something like that. Because usually when I write APIs, I try to consume every bit of it. I don't write anything for all the other edge cases. Um, if anything, I try to say, here's an error that handles the edge case. And I see your, but thank you for that, Jermaine. So Richard, I see what you said, but I want to go through this and work through it in my head, and then we'll let you guys help me out here too. All right, so the put method replaces all current representations of the target resource with the request payload. So it pretty much does an update. So you can do that. That'll be like your CRUD or the U in CRUD. Patch. This is another one. Patch is somewhat like put, I think. So let's read this. Patch. The patch method is used to apply partial modifications to a resource. So the difference between a put and a patch is a put will replace the entire resource. So put method replaces all current representations of the target resource with the request payload. And I've skipped over post for a reason. I want you guys to look at this because this is why it's just like never use these things. But these are the quote unquote right ways to do it. The patch method is used to apply partial modifications. So for instance, if I have my name, Michael, and I want to just update just Michael to Tom or correct the spelling, I would use a patch and it would only affect just that one thing. Delete. The delete method deletes the specified resource. And it's just like I go back to idempotent. I go back to it and I see where it says an idempotent method should not have any side effects. Not that delete is a side effect really, except for keeping statistics. So I guess that's not even it removing the resource is not a bad thing because it takes that away and changes the statistics that are actually kept. Right. So like if it takes something away, it might take away a series or a data point or something like that. But that doesn't have any side effects. All right. Now let's read post and I'll read your thing in your comment in a moment, Richard. So post. The post method is used to submit an entity to the specified resource, often causing a change in the state or side effect of the server or side effect on the server. Now, with that being said, I want y'all to know something. Depending on how you write your API, a post can delete information, it can patch information, it can put information, it can even get information. The biggest difference that I see between like mainly like a get and a post is with a get, I can reuse that URL multiple times because a lot of the information is defined within the URL itself, like a so, right? But if I use a post, I can actually have that information that's in the URL and then I can make changes to it. Now, depending on how I write my API, because I've actually written APIs where you might have a task, right? So, for instance, and again, this gets into like, okay, am I writing the API right? Is it the wrong way of doing this? So I can do task, and this is with if you use something called Express.js, and Express.js allows you to write APIs or write. It's a router, if you will, HTTP router that you can use to actually have your different routes. So I can actually have a task and then like call it task name, and then I can do let task name equal request.params, I believe, dot task name. So essentially this right here can be anything. I can have /delete, /put, /whatever, and it's still a post, right? So this can be a variable, if you will. And then I can even put like / somebody's name, /user, /profile delete, / whatever, right? So then I think it's like request.params or param. I think it's params though. Task name, right? And then right, let's do right. Actually, let's do this. We'll keep that. If and we did. We'll do this here. If task name equals, and it'll be a string, delete. And you could be creative in the way you write this. This is just not standard, right? Like this is just how I do all this stuff. So then like if task delete, then do our request database call or delete DB call. So now I'm actually doing a call to my database that is the delete function for my database, right? So this is an actual function that wraps the delete command, and that could be, that your backend database could be MySQL, Postgres, MSSQL, MongoDB, which is what I use, or any of that stuff, right? And then you put in the body. In the body, this is the request body here, and then after that request, and then the payload could be deleted. All right, and then your result is 200. Or I can send back whatever the HTTP method is for delete. So this is why a post, to me, like get and post are the only two things I use. Because after that, I can handle all those other type of methods in my business logic. Again, I'm usually in terms of like when I work with my job, as much as I talk with everybody else and everything else like that, I handle the code. I handle the coding of like some of the API stuff and the scripting and stuff like that. I do work with other people in terms of they put in on the scripting, and I show and teach other people about the scripting and everything else like that. But I don't work in a company where there's a standard put upon me. I'm somewhat making those standard as I go along and following the vision of my boss and even my department head and stuff like that and say, hey, listen, we want to do this. And it's like, all right, cool. This is how I would do this. And this is how I'm meeting your needs in terms of the business logic that is required or that is wanted in this case. But yeah, I can do the head, I can do the post, I can do all these things. It's just not the right way of doing it. It is not per the quote unquote design or quote unquote the actual spec. So keep that in mind. But a post is very powerful. Get is basically, you know, when you're going to a website, you're doing a get. You're not doing a post to a website because that would require you to send information to it in some way, shape, or form. But you can actually, you know, mess things up with that as well. Like you can do a get with a post. It should give you an error though. All right, so I wanted to read through that so you guys can like look at that and we break that down a little bit. Richard, let me get to your comment. Sorry about that. I just wanted to get that out. The delete leaving side effects might be similar to SQL where you can delete or truncate tables. Yeah, and that's kind of, if I'm understanding what you're saying right, like a delete sounds like it would have some type of side effect. Like, but again, that's also how how these methods were specced out when this standard was created. Actually, let's look at. Well said, sir. I appreciate that, Jermaine. I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, I do want to say, hey, listen, you know, some of this stuff that I say is one, I'm saying this now because things have changed with some of these things since they've been created. But I do want to, yeah, okay. So let's guys, we're going deep tonight. We're going deep. Get ready. Get ready to look at what they call white papers white. Because that's all you really see. This is an RFC or a request for comment. If you want, you think looking, you are not prepared. If you think looking through GitHub is something, look through an RFC. Okay, look through an RFC, a request for comment. So a request for comment is pretty much where these standards actually come out from. You know, this is how these standards are actually defined. So, for instance, Hypertext Transfer Protocol HTTP slash 1.1, which I believe is still current. I think there's 1.2 or 2.0, but the last time this was updated was 2014. But this is where some of this stuff has been put. Now, if we look at things like NoSQL databases, if we look at even the new way of doing things, those things were not accounted for. Or if we look at things like Express.js in terms of your router and so on and so forth, those things are not accounted for in these RFCs. If anything, Express.js and other web servers or web routers, if you will, those things actually adhere to the RFC. They look at the RFC and they provide the same functionality that is expected by the RFC itself. So with this RFC, if I was to look at the PDF version of this RFC, oh God, how many pages is this? 101 freaking pages. So this is what they talk about with white papers, the Bitcoin white papers, X, Y, and Z white paper. Literally, it is just like this looks like it was done on a goddamn typewriter, right? But this is where all of this stuff is defined. If you really want to go deep and understand a little bit more about what you're actually doing, and I'm not going to lie, I don't do this a lot. I have done this for, I've done this for Whois for another project. So the actual Whois binary, when you're doing a Whois google.com or something like that, I've actually looked at the RFC just so I can understand what is expected. So I can actually write a JSON parser for Whois. So I took the Whois output and converted it to JSON because it's not in the Whois binary itself. But I had to actually look at the RFC to look at all of that. Anyways, so we'll go through even the abstract here. The Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP. Bet some of y'all did. Okay, a lot of y'all probably knew that. HTTP is a stateless application level protocol for distributed, collaborative, hypertext, information systems. So let's look at that stateless word. That is a very important word. Stateless means that when you make a request to a HTTP server, it has no idea what state you had previous. So, for instance, if you're logged in, you may actually have to log in again. The part that is stateful instead of stateless, stateful is your database in some cases, or even your client on the client side where it saves maybe a password or your authentication to a web server or to a web server. That actually handles and re-authenticates you with the server and then allows you to go to the next step. But HTTP itself inherently, natively, is stateless, meaning it doesn't care about what you did before. It doesn't even know what you did before. HTTP allows you to get information and that's it. All the other stuff that's added on top of it that we know and love, such as being able to log in, being able to get information, being able to send information, HTTP doesn't give a flying fudge about it. Like it just says, hey, what do you want from me? Okay, here's what you want. Get away from me. And in some cases it's here's what you want. Oh, I have a bad gateway on the back end, and whatever the back end is has reported that there's an issue. Or in some cases, oh, you're not authorized for that. Or in some cases a 404, which we know and love, which is that resource is not found, which is another HTTP status code. So learn your HTTP status codes, guys. All right, cool. So going on to the second sentence, just so much in that first sentence alone. Oh my God. This document defines the semantics of HTTP 1.1 messages as expressed by request methods, which is our get, our post, so on and so forth. Daniel Tucker. Yeah, Daniel Tucker, what's up, Grizz? Yes, the good old RFC pages. By the way, Daniel, I do want to thank you for following me on GitHub, guys. Follow me on GitHub. I really do appreciate that. I think Daniel Tucker followed me years ago, though, to be very honest, a while ago. But yeah, I do want to say thanks for that. But yeah, RFC pages, man. If you really want to learn something about the protocols and the things that you guys use, this is where it starts. This is where they all like you read through a white paper, and bigger companies or somebody at a company, it like Nortel or not even Nortel, isn't Nortel even around, or Alcatel, Lucent, AT&T Labs, Bell Labs, T-Mobile, they're reading through these things. In some cases they're writing them. If you look at some of these guys, uh, let's get the comment off of there. Thank you, Daniel. I just wanted to make sure everybody can see this. But you could see our Fielding's Ed Adobe. Like, bro, I think, hold on, let's look. Our Fielding's Ed. No, Ed is something. Okay. Our Fielding. He might actually work for Adobe or Green Bytes. I don't know what Green Bytes is. Let's look up what Green Bytes. Greenbyte, leading asset management firm. Okay, so I could be wrong. Greenbyte. Oh, that's it. That's a really nice dashboard. We're going to be doing stuff like this hopefully next couple of weeks with with the financial asset tracker that we're going through, or that we're trying to come through. Yeah, it was years ago. Time flies, man. Yeah, time flies, and I'm finally trying to take a lot of this stuff seriously, man. But yeah, I think you're like the first person to really follow me, man. If not one of them. So I really do appreciate you guys that do follow. Richard, I know you're following, and Gabe, if you're listening to the playback on this, I really do appreciate you guys following. Yeah, so providing duplicate. Greenbytes was an American company providing inline deduplication data storage appliances and cloud scale I/O offload systems. So, some of these people that write these RFCs work for big companies, and they get paid to write these RFCs. They get paid to come up with actual protocols. They get paid to come up and, give actual talks and things like that. So it's good to know about these things and understand and dig a little bit deeper, because we can see that we're learning about idempotent or idempotent. And I think we got to it. Let's duplicate this here. Let's go back. back again. And we got this just from going into the Mozilla document, what's it called? Mozilla Document Network, and actually learning more about these HTTP methods and learning kind of the differences between all of these. And also, as I said, these RFCs, the reason why we went down this rabbit hole, some of these RFCs are written years ago, like HTTP for the most part is still on 1.1 in terms of what we use on a daily basis. And that's just because they just keep on updating. They just keep on updating the current spec, and the new spec might introduce one or two new features that are more important because of the changing landscape. Like, okay, this RFC wasn't probably, or the original version of this RFC probably wasn't looking or wasn't even thinking about social networks, wasn't thinking about compression and all this other stuff that you would need, or thinking about low bandwidth connections. It just thought about, hey, this is this is a markup language, and we want to transport that markup language, and we want to define methods on how to get information or manipulate requests to get certain bits of information from a backend. So, anyways, with all that being said, you can see even more about the RFC here, and you can read through all 101 pages of this RFC. Have fun with that. But it's definitely something, it's definitely a great way to really get into it. So for instance, if we're looking at method definitions here, so let's go down to page 24. And cool. So this gives us a little bit more information on a GET request, more than what we get here, which is summarized. Like, oh my God, look at the work that's been done for you guys in terms of consolidating that information. So let's go here and read this first paragraph. The GET method requests transfer of a current selected representation of the target resource. And they do it in vague terms like that. It's like current selected representation of a target resource. That can mean freaking anything. Like it really can. But at the same time, um, there it is defined within that one sentence, and it's pretty direct. GET is the primary mechanism of information retrieval and the focus of almost all performance optimizations. Hence, when people speak of retrieving identifiable information via HTTP, they are generally referring to making a GET request. I went to DuckDuckGo. That's a GET request. In some cases, if I do an image or something like that, that is a GET request, but on the back end, that might actually be a POST request to bring up information on a database. But for me to go to DuckDuckGo.com, right? And oh, this is a little bit what we talked about a moment ago. Look at this GET request. I can actually take this GET request. I can go here. I can open up another browser. Sorry, it's on another window, but I'm gonna drag it over now. I can open up another browser, do that same GET request. Green bytes is in the search bar. It pretty much gives me the same result. There's really no update or anything like that. Oh, a donut. There's really no update to the images, but I can actually repeat that. LOL might be better to read better to read Mozilla instead. Yes. No, if you know the art, but okay, I will say this. If you know a little bit more about the RFC, or get into the RFC a little bit more, you actually can get more money, because you're doing something that most people do not do. If you start to learn the HTTP protocol, or sorry, HTTP, or the hypertext transfer protocol, and you learn the ins and outs of it, the RFC, so on and so forth, and what all these different things mean, you will get more money. So by you saying, "Oh, okay, I know this is a GET request," okay, that's $5. You saying, "I know this is a GET request, and the GET request is a method that requests a representation of the specified resource. Requests using GET should only retrieve data." You get $10 by knowing the first paragraph of the RFC for, section 4.3.1 for a GET request. You're going to get 15, 20, $30, like you're getting more money the more information you know. And that's kind of the point of all this, is learning more, guys, and not being afraid to look a little bit deeper and going from there. All right, we've gone down this path quite a bit, but learning all these different methods is a good way to go. So let's close this out. Actually, let's open that last one, and I'll put the RFC. I'll put that RFC in there for you guys, for those brave enough to read it. All right, we've learned a little bit. We've gone through Coinbase. It looks like we're gonna have to. I want to see if I can get a public API. Oh shoot! Drop my mouse. All right, cool. Caught it a little bit. Where's my stuff? All right, cool. I want to actually use Postman, so I want to actually get an API, a public API of some sort, to where I can I don't have to do much of anything to get information. So this is a great anime, by the way. This was actually, I forgot the name of it. I think it's like Jin or something like that, and it was on Netflix. So definitely one to like watch. Did I close that whole thing? No way. Damn it, I closed the whole thing. Hold on, I think I could just reopen it like this. There you go. All right, cool. Oh, by the way, you guys can open up like a whole previous window if you wanted, by just doing Control Shift T on your when you're in the browser. So for instance, if the browser closes out and it's not in the incognito browser, which does not save all of your tabs or anything like that, you can actually open up your entire previous browsing session. If I close all this, I can just press Control Shift T, and it'll open up all that other stuff. Richard Dixon, I just want to do back-end work with APIs and databases. Is a portfolio of APIs good enough to get work, or should I still create front to back website instead? I would say do at least one front to back website, and then a lot of people, you can do a back end coder, but back end coding is great, and this is definitely what I want to do. I do not like doing front end code for normal people. I don't mind doing it for my day job, of course, because I pretty much have to deal with it, and then I deal with the one or two changes. But it's always good to know front end. The only reason why you should know front end or have an idea of the front end is because you need to know how that front end is going to make the request. You can help other people make the proper request or form the proper request when they're making their request from the front end to the back end or to your back end. So not just, excuse me, not just knowing your back end, but knowing how to tell people, hey, this is what my back end expects. And then also knowing how to help people consume the information that your back end represents, consume that in their front end application. So I would say at least do one full stack website, and then you can still focus mostly on the back end, because the back end is probably the most important and does all the business logic, microservices if necessary, or anything else like that, or database calls. And if you're going into just mainly back end and that's what you really want to do, with back end, one of the big things that you're going to be running into is back end. One of the biggest things you'll run into, you're going to be doing more work crunching data, and actually doing data warehousing. That's it. So with data warehousing, that's ingesting data from maybe APIs, from websites, from CSV files, Excel files, even XLS or XLSX, DLC files, DLCX files, what have you. You're going to be ingesting all that information, parsing it, meaning breaking it down, and then reforming it, and then probably putting it in your database, and then also reading all that information out of your database again. So that's one thing that you really want to get familiar with. So yes, do at least one front-end website. I would definitely suggest that. All right, so okay, public cryptocurrency pricing API. Actually, mm, mm, let's see here. Cryptocurrency data. Again, I wanted to do this with 100% free, no keys required, publicly available. Okay, we'll do it with CoinGecko.com. So CoinGecko.com, we can get information from them in terms of coin pricing and look at their stuff. And Richard Dixon says, bet. Yeah, man, if you have any other questions like that, or if anybody else has questions like that, please let me know. And hopefully we can find ways that I can actually help you out as well. So CoinGecko API. So it gave us the link up there. Oh, okay. We got a little documentation here. So CoinGecko API documentation v3. Oh, that's a documentation. Okay, let's see here. Rocket Man. All right. What's nice about Postman? It started off as really almost like a Google plugin, if you will, or actually a web extension, and now it's its own like program, its own like binary and everything else like that. That happened probably about I think maybe 2 years ago or something like that. I haven't used it for that long either though. What's nice is you can actually have all of your you can have different collections. So I can have like all the different collections, and within collections you can actually have like for instance Yelp. What's nice about this is if a company provides you a collection that goes into Postman, it's so beautiful because it gives you another way of consuming their API or learning their API. So for instance, Yelp. With Yelp, you can actually get the businesses and the business IDs and all the reviews and stuff like that, and then it rate limits you there. You do need an API key for them that gives you the access. And in some cases, you can actually have different environments for environment variables. I won't show that now because I'm not sure what it actually shows you, so I don't want to show off any API keys on my end. And then you can have different APIs, so you can actually create an API here and say, okay, this is the best way to get this API or get to this API and do whatever you need to. In some cases, some of these projects will actually give you an API collection that you can actually use to make API requests. So in this case, we don't have anything like that. Can I get rid of this? Be gone with you. All right, cool. So I can minimize that. Good. Oops. Oh, okay. All right. So let's see here. Was comprehensive. Okay, it just goes down further on the page. So in this case, it gives me schemes or protocols, HTTPS. So I can only use a secure method, which is nice. So it gives me an encrypted connection to the API itself. And what's nice about this documentation, this is like a living documentation. So for instance, I can actually click on this and try it out and execute. And it'll tell me what the endpoint is, right? The request. So I can do ping. So for instance, if I wanted to, I can do in this case, it's a GET request. And then I could put in the URL in Postman. And then I can go ahead and run this myself. So I can do send. All right, Gecko says V3 to the moon. I love that. So we're planning on doing something like this with Coinbase. We would need things in the authorization section. So there's different authorization methods. You can do inherit from auth parent, no auth, API key, bearer token, basic auth. And basic auth is like, if the website presents with a little text box or alert window at the top asking you for username and password. But then you have different authentication methods that are within the browser and that are handled by backend authentication APIs or credential APIs or credential brokers that are provided by the project or platform that you're trying to access. And what they'll do is they'll tell you the best way to actually give you that information, or the way that they expect that information to be given. In this case with Coinbase, that was funny. With Coinbase, it's requiring a SHA-256 HMAC. So essentially, what it's going to do, it's going to take pretty much these three values here, and then the CB access sign header is generated by creating a SHA-256 HMAC using the secret key on the pre-hash string, timestamp plus method plus request path plus body. So it takes all of that and compresses it, or makes it into a SHA-256 HMAC. And what that is just going to be a random string, or a string of random characters that actually represent your actual request. If you ever know something like an MD5 hash, it's kind of like that. It's going to give you somewhat of a hash. HMAC stands for something, but I forgot what exactly it is, and you can always look that up. But this is one thing that's nice about using the client libraries, because the client libraries don't expose all this to you. So for instance, if we go back to npm JS and API fork, which is what we're going to use, you can see that all I have to do is just do these two things. All the other stuff is handled for me, or handled by this client library in the backend. So then all I'll do is, like, I can do get accounts. So like Coinbase, right? I'll require the Coinbase module or library, and then I'll do assign that to a new variable, and then I'll do a new construct, so new, and then Coinbase, so Coinbase here dot client, and then it'll take in a JSON object that says the API key and the API secret. And then now I can use that client again, because now it's going to be using that Coinbase library. See how things are just chained here. So you're building. This is kind of like the basis of object OOP, which is object oriented programming. So you define your object, and then you start doing things with that object in terms of either modifying it, calling libraries, or things like that. So now you build on top of the previous object. There's inheritance and other things in there. So client.getAccounts, and then now this takes nothing in terms of a JSON object, but it does also take a function here as a parameter, and that function is our callback function in this case. We can define that function outside of it too as well, if you want to have like a general function that we can reuse in other places. But then we'll do accounts.forEach, so then we can say all of our accounts, and then it'll say like my balance for that account.balance amount, and then and then the account name. So in that case, I'm assuming the account name is probably like Ethereum. So like my balance of $1,000 for Ethereum, and that's just how the output is. And again, I'm reading that and I can think about that in my head, because I've written APIs and I've had to write helper functions like this, kind of like what I showed you guys last week with the Azure Blob Storage. Also, I did want to say that I am starting to put out gists, guys. So gists are little bits of code in some cases, that you guys can actually look at. And I don't know how to get to gists, but I think I could just do like, I think it's like gist.com or gist.github. But so I could do new gist. Yeah, it's gist.github. So then you can see some of my old gists. I actually put sanitized this information, but I put out some of my helper functions that I've written for ClickUp. So if you guys ever use ClickUp and its API, you can generate a token, an API key, and then you can actually use it. But this is how I know how to like look through these things, because I have to write these helper functions myself. So you guys can see how good or bad I code, and then you could probably even use some of this stuff. And what's nice about this too, in this gist, is that I actually give you some tests. So an actual test function here that you guys can actually run if you're using ClickUp. So definitely use that, share that, show it to other people, make them know that you know somebody that's cool, such as myself. Ha ha ha. But yeah, going back to this here. Yeah, list available accounts, get balance from account ID, selling Bitcoin, sending Bitcoin. So you can do all these different things through this library itself. And in some cases, you just have to do it yourself and figure it out using the documentation. Maybe they don't have a function that does what you want, or maybe you have to just make your custom function that might use different things out of here. Also, we see that they have their different status codes. So 200, successful request, 201, created, new object saved, 204, no contact object deleted, bad request, unauthorized, things like that. So you'll see all these different, this is what they expect to always give you in their API. Most likely their API will never give anything else. And if it's outside of this, then you might have to have an if statement that handles anything other than these status codes. So think about stuff like that. All right, so now um, let's split the screen again here. And we can see here, there shouldn't be any, I don't think, I have no reason why they would do an actual, anything other than GET request here. Yeah, because since this is a public API, I shouldn't be seeing anything else. So let's see token. So let's get a token price. Let's maximize this now again. All right. So simple token underscore price and then ID. Get the get current price of tokens using contract addresses for a given platform and any other currencies that you need. So ID string path. So the ID of the platform issuing tokens. Only Ethereum is supported for now. Okay, so I won't use this. I don't need that. I need something like this. All right, so simple price. Get the current price of any cryptocurrency and any other supported currencies that you need. So in terms of the currency, maybe that's like the country code. So let's read that. So ID, so it requires IDs and requires VS currencies. So versus currencies, it looks like. So versus whatever currency. So probably like versus USD or something like that. So ID of coins, comma separated in if querying more than one coin, refer to coins list. Okay. VS currency of coins, comma separated if querying more than one uh, versus currency refers to simple supported VS currencies. All right, so let's try this out. Uh, so let's try the ID of coins. So a true if or F and BTC and DGB, which is not Doge. And then currency, let's say USD and Euro, right? And then I don't have to include the market cap. We can though. It says it's a true or false, so it's a Boolean. Is that really a string though? Is that really a string? It's a Boolean. It's either true or false. Is that really a string? Because if it was a string, it'd be this. But if it's a Boolean, it's this, which is different, guys. So understand that true, true in the form, in a or encased in a single or double quotes is a string. True outside of a single or double quotes or no single or double quotes or anything around it is actually a Boolean value. So think about that. Yeah, just something for you guys to think about if you ever have any issues with that. So then anything else is true or false. So it defaults to false. But I'm going to include the market cap and execute. Show me what you're working with. So if I wanted to do a get, I can actually reuse this. Actually, if it's a get, right? This is another way you can actually do this, guys. I should be able to, right here, go. Oh, okay. It doesn't give me, it gives me an empty JSON object. But I should, in some cases, in some APIs, there's APIs that allow you to get your IP address. And it'll actually give you this information here, or it gives you information in this form here. So yeah, in this case, we're going to take that. Let's do this, and we're going to put that in Postman. So, response body. maybe I did something wrong here. Comma separated querying more than US. Okay, so maybe this has to be a string. Let's do this. So coin list refers to coin list. Coin list. Let's try it out. And then no other parameters. So it should be giving me a whole list of all the coins. So ID, and these are all the coins here. And I want to look for BTC. ETH? Oh, all right. So in this case, I need to go for there you go. Cash. It won't let me highlight anything here, guys. Hopefully it's not like choking or it doesn't look like it. But let's say Cash, right? And I want to go for Cash, and I'll do cancel. Oh shoot. Yeah, it's choking. Oh god. Oof. Yeah, I made it choke there a little bit. That's not good. So it gave me a lot. And that was most likely because I was searching through it or something. And it returns all the coins, which I think there's like well over 6,000 different coins. So that's not something that you want to actually do a lot. What's also nice is that we see that it's an array of objects here. So that means that it's JSON objects or an array full of JSON objects. And that way we can actually traverse through it and iterate through it, actually, I should say, with high order functions or high level functions such as for each, filter, map, and other functions that we can use to iterate, manipulate arrays. And this is probably something that you probably want to actually download once and maybe re-download maybe once a day or something like that to get new coins, or maybe every couple of hours. But you don't want to be doing this call every single time. And that's a little bit that's a little bit in terms of optimization. But we can actually just do a GET request through Postman for this entire list. And we can see how big that list is actually. So let's go ahead and enter. So it looks like it's a lot, and that's probably 393 kilobytes. Oof, it's quite a bit. And I don't know how many objects are in here. Oof, a lot. So we can even search through this, and this will probably be a little bit better to search through than all the other stuff. So we can search for BTC. Let's just do that, and then let's do that. There we go. Bitcoin. So our symbol or our ID is Bitcoin. See? And I was putting in like BTC and Ethereum or ETH. I was putting in its symbol, but not its ID. So its ID is actually Bitcoin, and Ethereum, I guess, is Ethereum. And the reason why I'm encapsulating in quotes is so I can get the right one. So Ethereum. All right, cool. So that's good. And again, this is what we're doing in terms of like trying to understand the API and understand what it can do. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark, guys. So I will be finishing the stream at that point. Usually 2 hours is about my cutoff. All right, so next thing was currencies. So there's contracts, that's for Ethereum. Exchanges, so we can look at all the different exchanges. Derivatives, okay, that's kind of cool. You see all these features in betas here. Events, so that could be like news articles and stuff like that. That's really kind of cool. Maybe we can get like news articles of what's happened recently. Let's do tryout. Country code. So US. It gives us an example. Oh, it's funny. I probably missed the example here in this portion here. So let me do execute here. Data download. guess there's nothing in there. Or maybe I have to put more in the string. Well, that's kind of cool. Exploring the CoinGecko API. And maybe I want to do something where like I leverage the CoinGecko API because I like its pricing better. Because all these different listing or these different coin market cap S sites like coinmarketcap.com, CoinGecko, all these different sites, what they do is they pretty much tell you information about the actual coin itself. And you can actually get maybe, you have three different APIs that you're consuming. Maybe you're paying for most of them or something like that, or some of them, and you want to take the average from these three different websites just so you can get a close to accurate price. Or maybe you want to take the average of a website that you quote unquote trust or believe has a better pricing mechanism, because some of these things are not always exact and they're reading from exchanges to get this information in some cases. So trending and global. So this is our API. This is like all the different things that this API allows for. So in this case, we need to do simple, and I want to do supported currencies, and there's nothing that I have to put in for the parameter. I can execute, and then in this case, I can do US. Yeah, so I can do USD, and then I can also do EUR. So yeah, I can do euro. So I was right in that case, but I think I was wrong maybe in the way I put it in there because it should be um, encapsulated in quotes. So I was right in terms of the symbol, but wrong in terms of my syntax. Again, very important. Look at all this stuff, right? So let's do simple price and try out. And in this case, we are a little bit better or well learned or knowledgeable. And then we're doing the Bitcoin. And I think the other one is Digibyte. And in this case, like we get another thing is like you could see it has little helpers in here, but I didn't read that the first time. So I can do USD, and then I can do Euro. All right, so then now I can execute and I expect something to happen here. No, cache control, Ethereum, okay. Maybe I need to just do one. It's always the last Ethereum, Bitcoin. It's always the last thing of the night that you get screwed up on. So let's execute this. Nope. Application JSON, include market cap. I don't want to include market cap. ID of coins is comma separated if more than one coin. VS currency coins, comma separated if querying more than one coin. All right, let's just do USD. Execute. Nothing. I kind of like to see an example now. Okay, maybe I was wrong in terms of me saying that I needed that. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I don't need, what's it called? Quotation marks. So Ethereum and Digibyte, right? And I want those in USD and I want that in Euro. So if I do this, awesome. So then also, as I said before, let's try this again and put this in. We can just go ahead and put this in here. Put this in a web page. Boom. So just like I said before, I just might the way I was requesting it was wrong. But this is learning an API, learning how to traverse it, learning what you could the do's and the don'ts. An API has a syntax as well. It might not require you that you encapsulate things in quotes. It's just not needed. Oh, and remember how I said a space is %20? I guess it's %2. or something like that, or %2C. Oh no, that's a comma. But also, this is the HTML representation of, or an HTTP representation of what a comma looks like, by the way, guys. That's kind of cool. So actually, like, I can look that up. Oh no, we don't. %2C. So what is a %2C in a URL? Look at the hex column. 2C maps to comma. These are like the little things that you learn when you're like looking at this stuff and just investigating this type of stuff here. But you'll see like 0, 0 equals null, 0, 1 equals SOH. I don't even know what the hell that means, what character that means. I don't know. 0, 6 means ACK or acknowledgement. So this is a whole list of what all those different codes mean. There is %20. Yeah, there I was right. It's %20 equals space or SPC. Like, it goes deep. It goes deep when you're looking at this type of stuff. It definitely goes deep. Like, I don't even know if you can look that up in here. %20. No, it's not defined in this RFC, but that's pretty cool. But yeah, so for instance, if I take this information, copy Daniel Tucker. All right, Richard Dixon, have you checked out the web developer roadmap for 2021 by Cam Ranahama Medsees on GitHub? I haven't, but let's go ahead and check that out. Actually, let me put this in first in terms of I want to put this and show you guys how it looks. It's nothing special, but I want to use the Postman tool and explore that a little bit more in terms of using it. So if I do a send to it, as you can see with Postman, it gives me a nice GUI in terms of having to program a lot of this stuff. Let me just take down your recommendation, Daniel. But it gives me a nice GUI in terms of trying to, instead of, can I paste links? Yeah, give me a sec. I'll give you moderator. I'll give you a wrench there. I was gonna look it up, but cool. Thank you for doing that. All right, you should be able to post links now. Might have to refresh the stream. Not exactly sure, but you should be okay to do that now. All right. So and guys, thanks for sharing information amongst each other. That's great, and that's what we want to try and do here in terms of like these streams. I try to share information. I go off on a lot of different tangents, mainly because there's just so much to explore, and you do have to focus. But sometimes let your mind wander. You're gonna find some great things. So in terms of looking at all of this, you can see that it's a number, right? And you see how this number is not encapsulated in quotes, like, so Ethereum's current price in USD. Ooh, this is another thing. So it gives Ethereum as the overall key, and then the sub keys are the actual bit of information that I need. So I need it in euro or USD in euro, right? So maybe another sub key is going to be the market cap. What's the total market cap? And I don't even know what how market cap is actually shown there. So thank you for posting that link, Daniel, or Mr. Tucker, because you look like you're older than me and I have to show respect. But so in terms of euro, you can see that it's a number, and it's not encapsulated in a quotation mark, which would denote like a single or double quote, which would denote that it's an actual string. Right. So this is kind of cool. So I can see that USD for Digibyte is 13 cents. In euros, it's 11 point. Oh, you're 32. You're younger than me. You call me sir. Oh man. But it's good to see that, young guys are in this, man, and we're looking at these things on a regular basis, especially my brothers, my black brothers, man. That's a good thing. And this is how we're, gonna close that wealth gap. You know? So if we look at USD, and just breaking down and looking at this a little bit deeper. Now, this isn't the Coinbase API, but this might be an API that I'm going to use. also, we can see that in this case, what I usually expect is that it's an array of JSON objects, not a JSON object of JSON objects. You see that? Like, I don't know, it's not normal. No, sorry, you know what? In API design or anything like that, the only thing that is normal is what you present. So if you present or output an object, a JSON object of JSON objects, that's normal. So don't go into it thinking and making the same mistake that I just did. But now we can see, Digibyte and anything else. We can see all these different coins here. So these might be coins that I want to actually take a look at or keep track of or anything else like that. Learning how what the ID is versus what the symbol is. I was using the symbol and not the IDs, and then also the way I have to pass it. I don't pass it using. I don't have to encapsulate it in double quotes when I pass it to the backend API. So that's important. That's importante. You can see that they use curl here. Yeah, the type is always the same. Include market cap. Let's see how that looks. So execute, and then I'm just gonna take their fancy little URL here. So they only do GET requests. They don't do any post requests or anything like that. So I can't pass the body as I usually like to in a post request, which is not a big deal, especially if you're using a library like Axios or something like that. Um, so all right. So okay. Yeah, see? And this is kind of cool. Yeah, see? This is kind of cool. So it says USD and then the USD market cap. So it tells me what the market cap is in US dollars and in euros. That's really nice. But that's again, this is kind of what you want to do. And in terms of what kind of patterns do we see here? Well, I can see that it's always going to be underscore market underscore cap, but then it's always prefixed with the actual currency type or currency symbol or currency code in this case. So USD underscore euro underscore. So like that's a pattern. So I can always say like I don't have to know that it's always going to be euro. Now that's a pattern I'm seeing and it's limited. Maybe I don't, maybe, GBP or something like that. I won't, maybe it's different for GBP, you know? So that's just something that hopefully I can handle this stuff in a predictive nature. Why is that important? So for instance, if I write my code, um, hmm, let's continue this here a little bit. So if I write my code for this and I'm expecting um, let object equal request dot body. All right, so we've built an API or backend logic that pulls from another API using Axios, and I have my result, and that object is request.body or something like that, or um, result actually of Axios call, right? And that's the result of the Axios call, and then that I think is usually like data. So now I have that data assigned to object, and then I have object, and then let's see here. I have object, and yeah, I have object, and I want to let's see how to set this up. Let currency equal hold on, sorry. I gotta watch something. My coworker just sent something to me in chat. So, all right. Oh man, we're a little bit over. But yeah, let's finish this out here. So let currency equal USD. And then I can say object, and then I can say if I want to get an object, get the market cap, I can use a template literal, if you will. And in that template literal, I can say currency underscore market underscore cap, no cap. Anyway, so I can say underscore market cap, and then I can do let market cap equal, or actually more to the point, USD market cap equal this. So let USD market cap equal this. And I'm taking my currency, USD, and then the fact that I'm just looking at it and saying, okay, I think this is the pattern that I see in terms of when I have USD. So I use USD and I can have market cap. So I can do something like that. It's the way I think about it. Like when I'm looking at this API, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can go through this. If my currency is USD, my object is the result of Axios call.data. Axios is a library that allows you to talk to web servers, making get, post, head, put, patches, deletes, all those different requests usually are available through Axios. And again, I only use get and put or get and post. But I can make a call using the Axios library. One thing I like about the Axios library is I can use it client side and I can use it server side. And then by having the same library client side and server side, I can write pretty much the same code and expect the same response, or write the code in the same fashion. So that's the good thing about using a library that can be used on both sides of your project, is using something that is kind of like common ground, if you will. Anyways, so let object, and it usually gives it to me. It gives me the body of the request in .data, or the data object, and from there I can go through that data object, and the object. So it might be object dot Bitcoin dot. There we go. Right. So as you see, it's the result of this Axios call, the data in it is going to give me an object, and then I'm going to reference the key in one of these, which is Bitcoin, and then one of its underlying values, which is currency market cap. So currency underscore market cap, or underscore market underscore cap. Um, yeah, and that's kind of how I'd write it. And then that should give me, like, if I do a console.log, use the, there you go. Yeah, I could do something like that, and then it should give me, the market cap, which would be, some freaking numbers, all the money I don't have, right? So that's pretty much how it would look, and then I can do things like maybe I can encapsulate that in a template literal. Could do a $, and I can do a $, market cap. All right. $, market cap. And the way, gotta close that out. The way that will look is like that. So pretty much that's how you go through an API. This is one of the ways that you can use Postman. There's a lot more you can use in terms of Postman when you're dealing with APIs. Richard Dixon, this is definitely something that you should really get into. If anything, take a Udemy class, read articles, listen to videos, more about Postman and what it can actually do in terms of all the different collections, and also the synchronization between different working environments with Postman, which is really nice. This has just been, like, a short example of some of the things that you're doing with Postman, how we're breaking down documentation of an API, and also working with that API, and also defining patterns. I hope this helps you guys. As always, if you're not taking what I say with a grain of salt and you're low in sodium, make sure that you do your research, look into these things a little bit deeper, challenge me in the comment section, say something. Say something I'm wrong. Say something. Oh, don't you don't have to say I'm great, but I do appreciate for the people that do say, thank you for my work and things like that. And I hope it does help you guys. As always, thanks for listening. Really appreciate you. My mouth is dry. I am going to drink some water, and I got some benching to do tonight, so gotta get swole. Peace.